The title of the panel is Grand Challenges in Ocean Science for a Sustainable Future. We will have 45 minutes to raise some of the issues and some of the questions. It's also my pleasure to have a wonderful panel to help us debating this issue. I can start with Françoise Gaël, thank you. She's Vice President of Ocean Climate Platform. We have also Miguel Miranda, that is the President of the Portuguese Institute for the Sea and Atmosphere. We have Lisa Levin, that is a distinguished professor of biological oceanography of the Scripps Institution. We have also Pascal Lamy, that is currently the president of the Paris Peace Forum. And we have the representative of Woods Hole, that is Kilaparti Ramakrishna, that is the senior advisor of the president of the Woods Hole institution. So I will start the debate. I'm standing just to see you better. You have the names and the faces of the panel just besides them, so you can check who they are. And I will start raising the question to Pascal Lamy. Okay, so Mr. Lamy, you are deeply involved in the development, you were deeply involved and still deeply involved in the development of the Starfish mission. Sorry, but I need to take out my glasses. As stated in the Starfish mission, its objective is to restore our oceans and waters by 2030. Of course, this is a European Commission project, and while I know it's a little bit more about the project, could you please, in the context of the United Nations Ocean Conference, share with us how this will go beyond the European Union and cover the rest of the world, and how it will address the global challenges facing the world oceans, please?
Okay, thanks. I'll answer this question briefly. You're right. I have the privilege to chair this Starfish mission, which is a EU program, the purpose of which is to regenerate the EU hydrosphere by 2030. So it's a huge package of policies, instruments, regulations, investments, the tune of which from the EU budget is 1 billion euros. This was decided by the EU Commission last year, and we are now moving to the implementation phase, which I will have the privilege to oversight. In this big program, there is a huge science component, starting from a simple consideration, which is that we know we have to act rapidly to stop the degeneration of marine systems, water systems, and move it the other way around to regenerate. We have little time to do that, as we heard yesterday from a variety of speakers, Peter Thompson, Cynthia here, Earl, the Portuguese president. We need to act quickly, but we also need to realize that we do not know two-thirds of what we should know in order to act quickly. So, doing what needs to be done implies a major scientific jump, because if we go the way we've been going so far in getting knowledge on the ocean, we will be there 70 years from now. So we don't have time to do that. We need to find a shortcut. And we've devoted, with science people, and there are quite a number of them on this panel, a special attention to building a European digital twin of the ocean. Of course, it cannot be just a European digital twin, but we've decided that EU itself would build an European digital twin and then try and take the global leadership of coalescing, building, making it compatible, interoperational with US, Chinese, Russian at the time, and that's a different problem now, So that's the big idea. The big idea is let's have by 2025, and that's the first phase, a core European digital twin in building on what exists with Copernicus, with a variety of European scientific programs. We are doing this in cooperation, notably with the International Ocean Science Commission, our good friend Vladimir Ryabinin, and we've already started organizing a series of compatibility slash interoperability slash fungibility tools for data, coming 2/3 from space, 1/3 from the ocean and water systems. So that's our contribution. And the Commission just published, before this summit, this week, a paper which Europe Jacques Delors, which is the Institut Jacques Delors in Brussels. We have one in Paris, one in Berlin, one in Brussels, and the one in Brussels is specialized on sustainable development. And we've just published a piece on global ocean governance, while the Commission was proposing its own piece this week. And this is my final point. This is not just words. We have in the paper which the Commission published this week 1 billion for starfish between now and 2030. We have, and I have the numbers under my eye, 300 million euros for the ocean research and science each year in the next 10 years. So that's solid commitment. And we have on top of that 110 million euros from the European Research Programme for the years 21, 22, 23 that will focus on what Starfish is doing, including the digital twin of the ocean. So we now have a vision, we have a decision, we have resources, so let's go. And all those who share this view that the only way to find a shortcut to traditional ocean science, which is to build a digital twin with a considerable increase in data and in capacity of artificial intelligence to deal with it, let's join efforts together.
Thank you very much. I will come back to you later. Now I will pass to Miguel Miranda. Miguel, you are of course the president of Ipma, so you are at home, and you are also a co-organizer of this event. But we know that Ipma is the lead agency dealing with atmosphere and ocean in Portugal, and one of the hosts of this conference. Could you share with us your vision of addressing the grand challenges facing the ocean, and in particular the role of national agencies such as Ipma, and what role do you see for partnerships, and what has Ipma, and including the Portuguese government, have been doing to promote that partnerships around the world?
Okay, good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be with such a qualified panel, and I found immediately what will be my best friend in the forthcoming years, that is Pascal Lamy, because he's full of money. What are we doing up to now? Ipma has a tradition of cooperation, mostly based on the Atlantic. This should be understood because this is characteristic of our ADN, DNA. We have stable cooperation with US, organized through...
Can someone try to see if someone can stop the noise, please?
Apparently it's aliens that are trying to understand how to solve the ocean problems.
Think you are a fish and this is a boat going through.
Doing geophysics. No, this was a joke because I'm a geophysicist. And I have my colleagues here. No, so we have this stable cooperation with US and with Canada, and we have a huge cooperation with Norway and Ireland on the Atlantic countries. We are an institute that deals with atmosphere and the ocean and geophysics. And the first thing that bothers me from the beginning is why geophysics and meteorology are so well organized and why the ocean is so fragmented. This is typical of the history of the ocean. I can try to find anthropological reasons for that, why the people that is devoted to the ocean are not so organized as the communities that deal with the other planetary sciences. But what I see now, for the first time, is that things are changing. Europe has now the ambition to create an intergovernmental organization devoted to the ocean as a follow-up of Mercator, and Portugal and Ipma will be deeply devoted to that option. The IOC is also evolving and taking much more responsibilities even on an operational level. We now have new tools and new data sources. So can we do something really new? I think we can, but it won't be easy. Satellites are good, are fast, they have bunches of data, but they do not penetrate very much on the water. In situ observations are very expensive. And while cooperation up to now is always presented as the solution to the cost of ocean exploration, I can tell you there is no single solution. We must face the need of complementary solutions for this. We must be able to tackle with national marine institutes or big universities that have the means to do systematic monitoring of the ocean, with researchers that do point-by-point operations, focus on specific science problems, with this intergovernmental organization that must deal with the combination of data and operational models. We must merge atmosphere with the ocean. This is another discussion we will have later for sure. And finally, we must be citizens working much more on science. I always thought that the future is not to explain people what is going on. No, the future is to organize with people science, monitoring and science development, and to say there is some scientific responsibility on citizens, and they must be shaken to be understand. We are talking on survival. So if we are talking on survival, you have the responsibility, you must do your job. Not only us, scientists or other deciders, every citizen must do their job.
Thank you, Miguel. I think it's a good way. I'll come back to you later. I will pass now the floor to you bring to this panel your rich background in many aspects of the global challenges. You have also an extremely important role in the establishment, exactly as Miguel was saying, on the Ocean Climate Platform. The challenges facing us today are not the kind that you can address in a single entity, as Miguel was saying. So in this manner of speaking, we are continuing referring to the presentation of Miguel. Could you share with us how you came up with the idea and the success you are able to achieve so far and the challenge you are facing moving forward on the Ocean Climate Platform, please?
Yes, I'm very glad to be here and thank you for inviting me. While I am a researcher and the ocean was always the object of my passion. But being a scientist, we have to take care about the distance you have with such an object. And going at sea often to look at the deep sea ecosystems and all the questions we have on the ocean functioning and the ecosystem evolution. We were very interested by the fact that we discovered deep sea ecosystems which were really in the same shape that we will have if we do not take care of climate change in the future. In the hydrothermal ecosystem, deep sea ecosystem, you will have a lot of CO2 level, a lot of acidic conditions, anoxic also waters, And so it means that we have to take care of what we call adaptation. And this feeling of urgency to react to the physical environment for life is at the origin also of my evolution, because I was really a true academic scientist, and I didn't know very well what was NGO. But as we had in Paris the opportunity to have the COP21 on climate change, we were several scientists asking what we will do in the future for that. And also we were discussing with a lot of friends. We were outside the academic institutions, sellers, for example, but also startups and people from maritime companies, and telling them, but have you seen, we are discussing on climate, but climate science, sure, but we are also discussing only on forests and never on the ocean. And I was one time at the Academy of Science in the States, and it was the opportunity to listen to some Nobel Prize, and also they have invited the head of the IPCC, at this time it was RR5, and it was on desertification process, so a lot of African research. And in fact, it was only telling us, well, you will see in the next report, we will have all the questions on the ocean. The ocean will be at the origin of a lot of evolution for climate change and so on. And all the people who are not from ocean science were looking at him and saying what he is telling us. And so after that, we decided to organize with IOC, with Tara Ocean, with other WWF, the first NGO only on ocean and climate, to have an action on the next COP21, and we succeed. We succeed not only because we were an NGO, but also because we were discussing with all the partners, not only scientists, but also all the actors of the ocean, and also all the actors of the states, not only Europe, but also small island states. And it is in this cohesion, in this sharing the understanding of what we would like to do and what we would like to push, that in fact the ocean for the first time was inside the Paris Agreement. And after that we continue asking also for the IPCC special report, and it was published some years after that. And most of the people here were participating to this action. These are also who are in the scientific committee of the Ocean and Climate Platform, and some people from UTSO. And now we want to go further, and we want to develop the idea of IPOS, which is an international panel for ocean sustainability, and it can be also an intergovernmental panel for ocean sustainability, but we will discuss later about this question. And we will have a session on Thursday at 5 p.m. for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back. I'll pass now the floor to Mr. Levin, because you are one of the academic scholars that have successfully transitioned and addressed the growing challenge of climate change to ocean sustainability. You have also been thinking long and hard on areas beyond national jurisdictions. That is also one of the issues being discussed here this week. What do you see as the grand challenge for deep sea science, and how does this relate to extraction from the deep sea of both living and non-living resources? What in particular do you wish for this conference to accomplish in addressing the concerns you have regarding ocean sustainability. This is a very complex question, but I think
Long one.
you can deal with it.
Well, thank you so much for asking me that very long, multiple questions. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I do have to say, nice to meet all of you. Francoise is a really famous deep sea biologist who's been one of my role models for many years. So it's an honor to share the stage with her also. Okay, so I am going to talk about the deep ocean, and she's already introduced that as part of her inspiration. And for us, the deep ocean is below 200 meters. And this is, in fact, most of the ocean, but people hardly ever think about the deep ocean. And you may not realize that 75% of all of the state's exclusive economic zones are deep ocean. And half of the exclusive economic zones are deeper than 2,000 meters. So we are mostly a deep ocean set of nations. And I really believe that our grand challenge is understanding the deep ocean, and in particular its biodiversity, the functions of that biodiversity, the services it provides to people, and the vulnerabilities to pressure from human activities and human-induced climate change. And these are growing threats in the arenas of pollution and deep-sea fishing and seabed mining as well. So it turns out we've mapped about 20% of the ocean, but we've actually studied less than 10% of the deep ocean's ecosystems. And what this means is we haven't yet described most of the species that live in the ocean. And even for the species we know about and have described, we don't know their life histories. This means we don't know how long they live, we don't know what they eat, we don't know how their populations are connected, we don't know where their larvae or juveniles live, and we don't know their vulnerability to climate changes like warming and acidification and loss of oxygen. We don't know whether they're vulnerable to the contaminants we release in the ocean or to the suspended sediments that are released potentially from mining, but also from bottom trawling. So these are all the types of information that we need to manage nascent industries like deep seabed mining. This is the types of information we need to locate and design and scale up any carbon dioxide removal technologies. We need so much information to properly manage the ocean. And yet the deep sea, it's vast, it's really expensive to work there. This means we won't ever know all the species that live there or what they do. But our challenge is to deal with that, to develop methodologies and technologies to automate characterization of deep sea ecosystems, to learn about the carbon services those ecosystems provide or how they respond to change when we perturb the ocean. So our challenge is really to develop enough scientific information and knowledge to inform policymaking and decision-making before we do irrevocable harm to the ecosystems that we don't yet understand, and probably to ecosystems that we haven't even yet discovered. So we need deep sea science to inform the design of protected areas, whether they're through the International Seabed Authority or the FAO or the BBNJ or the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity. We need a lot of baseline data about the deep sea before we lease out areas for seabed mining or oil extraction, or before we expand our new fisheries into, for example, the mesopelagic fishes, which now people are looking at. We need also to empower our island nations. They're really large ocean island nations. Most of their territory is deep sea, and they need information, and we need to help them characterize their deep sea ecosystems before they make decisions about mining and oil extraction and fisheries. So this is going to take all the deep sea capacity we have and much more than we don't have. I think our challenge is to build capacity to do deep sea science and make it the domain of all nations, not just wealthy nations, not just the Northern Hemisphere, but to expand it to all. And this this conference really offers an opportunity to do that, to build capacity to understand and care for the deep sea. And I hope that over the next week we can raise awareness and also help people realize that to manage our oceans sustainably, we need to be incorporating climate change and tackling biodiversity loss at the same time we build out our blue economy. So putting that all together, I think, is going to require new partnerships, and I'm optimistic that some of that can happen this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I think job to answer my complex question. You are, of course, one of the co-organizers together with us, Ipma, of this event, and I understand that in addition to your years of experience in drafting climate agreements and working with the United Nations and the Green Climate Fund, you have recently moderated the Glasgow Climate Summit, mandated by the Ocean Climate Change Dialogue in Bonn a week or so ago. Do you feel that this approach will lead us to effectively link the role of oceans in providing climate solutions? And what, if any, needs to be done to move forward?
Thank you very much, Telmo. It is a great honor to be able to co-host this meeting with Ipma and to get to know Miguel and Telmo and work with both of you over the past several weeks. And of course, a great distinction and honor to be with the panelists, all of who have decades of experience in all the topics that we're talking about. I will come back to answering the specific question that you have asked me, but I want to pick up on what Lisa had said and then emphasize the importance of the deep sea. We have what is called the Ocean Twilight Zone project in Woods Oceanographic Institution. It's the mesopelagic zone, and one of the discoveries is that the carbon that is sequestered by the creatures that live in that zone and deposited to the bottom of the ocean floor is between 2 to 6 billion tons of carbon per annum. Just think about that. And as you think about fishing in that zone and the impact that it would have on, the basic point is we don't know enough about what is going on in the deep ocean. And we need to. And it is oftentimes said we know more about the dark side of the moon than about our own ocean. And it has to change. And I think this conference is a wonderful way to answer many of the questions that we have and find solutions. And I was particularly pleased to listen to Pascal Lamy and the project that he is shepherding and the opportunities that it has. And another theme that is running through the panel, as you recognize well, is the importance of partnerships. Every one of us talked about that, and I'm particularly glad to be sitting next to Francois. And the way to move forward is not through these procedures that we have worked for all these decades. We cannot dispense with them. We need them in terms of formalizing the decisions that we take. But if we were to rely only on that, we don't have enough time. We keep talking about IPCC reports and how 1.5 and 2 are important. And the only way we can make that happen is if we step outside our comfort zone and take on challenges. And what Francois and her team had done in establishing the Ocean Climate Platform, in bringing together not just governments and research institutions, but also private sector and non-governmental organizations, and try to work together, in finding answers is really the way to move forward. Now, in coming up with this title, Grand Challenges in Ocean Science, that's a huge topic. We can spend days, if not weeks and months, just trying to enumerate them, what those challenges are. But we don't have time for that. What we need to do is pick up on things that we do know, and then try to answer them, find solutions, move forward with that. So this Lisbon conference and the Sharm el-Sheikh following that are really very important. And one other point I want to mention before I move to answering your question is, when we talk about ocean, we generally look at it as, well, it's providing all these services. You know, how much heat it is absorbing, how much anthropogenic emissions it is, sequestering, and how much food it is supplying, and all those things. So when we think about that, we look at oceans as an object. Okay, we just leave it as is. It will going to continue providing those services to us. And another thing that we do is think about oceans in terms of the adverse impacts that it has through tsunamis and various other things, and how devastating it is to the human society. So this concept of thinking about the ocean as either a victim that climate change is going to harm it, or a villain that it is going to impact us and make our lives miserable. I think we have to move past that. We have to think about ocean in terms of solutions that it can provide us, not just in terms of feeding the vast multitude of the humanity, but in actually providing solutions so we can deal with climate change issues moving forward. So all of that brings me to the question of what we are trying to do here in the UN and the dialogue that you talked about. It is, I think, a great move forward. We have been at it for a long period of time, but the climate processes formally did not acknowledge the role of ocean. The Paris Agreement did, but only in the preamble. So the Glasgow Summit formally asking the subsidiary bodies to have this dialogue, and I want to acknowledge the presence of Lorelei Court. She was the rapporteur for the panel that I had the pleasure to moderate, is, I think, a very good thing. It's bringing what was outside inside the conference rooms, so that decisions can be taken. But we have to, as I said in the beginning, not just rely on it to provide us the way forward. Working through the platforms, working through the Starfish project and various other things, we have to really think about not the linear way of making progress, go step by step, but then get outside the box and then think about what sorts of solutions are going to really help us move this issue forward. And only then would we be able to make the kind of progress that is needed. The one very last thing I want to say is that Lisa talked about only 20% of the ocean floor is mapped, and I have the pleasure of being the chair of the Strategic Advisory Board of the Seabed 2030, and the project is essentially about mapping the ocean floor by 2030. We may not get there by 2030, but there are a lot of issues, including Lisa is going to be discussing that on Wednesday, so that's another opportunity to further explore these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamil. You almost steal my last question for all. We still have some minutes, but I will put one last question for all. From your perspective, from your organization's perspective, what would be the success of this year? What would be the best outcome for this conference from the perspective, personal perspective, but also from the perspective of your organization? Pascal, start by you.
Well, I was precisely trying to sum up in my mind what has been said, which I think would be a pretty good outcome. First, 5 simple points. 1, we have no time. Second, we need a lot of science. 3, this will not happen without much more international cooperation, hence serious problems of governance which we need to address. Just take one example. If you want to merge European, American and Chinese data coming from space or coming from water, if you put that in the hands of diplomats, it will take 25 years. So there is a specific approach to this science element which we need. And finally, I think it's also time for pushing this idea of citizen science, not just on the ocean, but on the hydrosphere in general. The notion that the ocean starts with your sink, and that there is something you can do, not just big conferences, but everybody. That would be my sort of summary.
Thank you. Miguel, what would be for you a good outcome?
A good outcome. As I do not believe very much on these very political approaches, I will say that the best outcome will be to make the first steps on what will be the World Oceanographic Organization, parallel to the World Meteorological Organization, that will be able to really organize everywhere in the Earth what should be understood to move forward. From our point, you know very well what we want to do. We want to go from the coast to the open ocean, from the surface to the deep, and from fixed observation to continuous observation. It is completely strange that even in the 21st century we treat the ocean as a whole. The ocean is diverse, is complex, and we cannot treat him always as a simple object, because it is not. On the other side, it is so interconnected that it is very difficult to separate the process from the other. And this is what makes the challenge difficult, but it is also what makes it also interesting for the forthcoming years.
Thank you. Françoise, pass it to you. What will be a good outcome for you from the work of this week?
I think that the ocean has to be considered as a whole. But also, it's an ecosystem. It was the idea of the COP21 to name the ocean as an ecosystem. And in this respect, it is a complex system. I think that we have to take into account the urgency that Pascal was discussing, and perhaps also to focus on what type of solution, ocean-based action may we have, what will be the science policy interaction that we have for the next hygrosphere action and vision, and also to act, to have a shared knowledge, and to give the taste of the ocean for all the people of the earth.
Sure. Well, thinking about the international ocean, which is 60% of the ocean, I would love to see us find a way to remove all the silos, because this part of the ocean now is managed separately for fishing and for minerals and for biodiversity and for climate. It's all separate discussions, and I would love to see us find a way to have one single discussion that brings all of these things together, and this, without sort of turf wars and people worrying about at the UN level their own specific interests. I think we're only going to be able to conserve and steward and manage the ocean by bringing all these aspects together.
Well, the year we are in is 2022, and we adopted what was considered the Constitution for the Oceans, the Law of the Sea Convention, in 1982. So this is the 40th year. But in the 40 years, we have not really learned enough to do the kinds of things that we have to do that this panel has been talking about. That has to change. And I take Lisa's point about how we need to break down the silos. But what I want to submit is it is not for the United Nations to do it. The United Nations is but the creature of the member countries. And the silos that the UN has are the silos that the member countries have. And unless we bring about change across the board, we're not going to have a solution. So what I'd like to see in this conference is basically reiterate the point that everyone else has made, but chart the course. The conferences, however important they are, are not the end point. They have to begin the process of taking the difficult decisions, investing the kinds of resources that we need, and bring everybody, including the citizen science part of it, is vital. It means a lot to a lot of people, and we don't know enough about the oceans. We need to get that information to the people and move forward.
Thank you very much, Rama. I think this is a good way of ending our session here. I would like to ask a round of applause to our panelists. I think it was an honor for me to moderate a panel constituted by these high-level profile people, and I hope to see you all around. Thank you very much for
Thank you, Del.
Thank you.
Allez.
Let's just take one picture together and then